Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mel B, coming to you live from Conscious Consumer Network headquarters here in The Hague. It is great to be with you live on air once again, covering some of my favorite turf, the stuff that is close to my heart and that needs to be exposed. Joining me tonight is Leigh Oxley from South Africa and Karin Smith, who is a former South African now living in Texas. And tonight we're going to be talking about the topic of South African genocide, specifically what is going on in South Africa and the greater agenda, how it all fits together. So thank you, ladies, both of you, for joining me. I'm going to go to each individually so you can introduce yourselves and give a little bit about your journey and your experience. So Leigh, I'll start with you.
Yes, I'm Leigh Oxley and I'm a South African. For the past 3 years, I've been working in the white squatter camps. It's been really tough. I'm also an activist against the farm murders happening. It's not an easy road because we actually on the ground in these camps, we see the devastation, we see the poverty, we see the little ones' hunger. We deal with families who've been attacked. Some who have survived and some family members who've lost people. It's not easy at all.
Hold on. Karin, you've been on our network before. I just wanted to ask you as well to give us a little bit of an entrance into the subject from your perspective.
Yeah, I'm Karin Smith. I'm an ex-South African. I spent 58 years of my life in Africa, from Rhodesia to Namibia to South Africa. It's what was once a beautiful, wonderful country has now become an absolute disaster. I still have most of my family living there, and we are an enormous family of Dutch descent. My branch of the family are the first ones ever to speak English because my dad married English, and we grew up with a very, very Dutch grandmother who still wore the black kappie that the Boers wore, and we had to go to Sunday lunch at her house every Sunday after church, and they had this enormous dining room table that seated 18, and she would head the table in her black dress and her black kappie and ruled that family with a rod of iron. So I'm kind of from both sides of this, the British side, which my mom was, and the very, very Boer side, which my dad was, because his grandfather was General Wessels, who fought in the Boer War. And it's a very strange place to be, actually, to be a kind of a crossbreed, because you must be one thing or the other in South Africa. However, the situation there is deteriorating by the day, and I don't really know what one can do about it. I have raised as much money as I can for Leigh Oxley a charity which feeds, houses, medicates, does everything that they can for the people in the white squatter camps, and also is purchasing a farm where she, her husband, and one other very stout young man who works very hard have put up houses and an ablution block and a kitchen, and they are going to save families from the squatter camps, reskill them into some kind of skill that is in demand in the South African markets, and then help them to get on their feet and get a business going or get a job where they can re-enter society, re-enter commerce, and make a difference. So I'm involved in that. But at the same time, I'm also helping those who can and want to leave South Africa. So I raise donations for them on my website and will help them pay for their tickets to get here, help them pay for their visas once they're here, help to support them while they apply for asylum, help pay for their lawyers, help to feed and house them while they wait for that hearing because it can take years. And so I'm working in both things to help the people who can't get out and also trying to help those who have a small chance of getting out. The problem with that is you go to a country, you apply for asylum, you wait many, many years to get a yes or a no, and you can still be deported back home. So you're taking a chance staying or going. I don't think there's any real definitive answer. There are many in South Africa who have dug in their heels and said, my family has been here since day one, and I am not being traced away. Now, I sympathize absolutely with that. Why should you? And having left myself, I know the culture shock. I know the homesickness. I know the longing for just some South African food, please, or an Afrikaans accent, or somebody who understands your joke. Because although I've been here almost 6 years, nobody knows me. They don't come from the same background. They don't share the same history. I'm at home and yet not. Integrating is relatively easy, but belonging is quite another thing. So I understand the point of view that I'm not leaving. Why should I leave? But if you look at the fact that I think we have 30,000 farmers left in South Africa, and there have been 4,000 odd farmers murdered. And that means that that farm is no longer productive. And that's not even mentioning the farms that have been redistributed to the blacks and are now standing idle. So South Africa faces a very real possibility of starvation, the same as Zimbabwe, where they are eating rats, I believe, and even those are running out. South Africa faces that. And for me, I would never recommend go or stay. It's not my place to make that decision for people. But I feel that they should have the option, because right now they don't have. Right now their only option is stay. Sorry, that was a very long monologue.
Beautiful. You know, I've actually got tears running down my face from that, because when you were talking about those things, I identify with so many aspects that I want to hit on there. Being a multicultural South African of Boer descent, growing up in Durban, which is a very English place, myself as well, first generation of English speaking. My dad was English, my mom was Afrikaans, my aunt's Afrikaans, my cousins went to Afrikaans schools. So I've got that. And then, of course, doing the thing that we all decided to do in 1999, and just about the whole school year exited and went to London on the working visa holiday type thing. And I was lucky enough to then meet my amazing husband of 16 years. We married, he's Dutch, and that facilitated my opportunity to not have to go back to South Africa. I was able to then not have the opportunity to either stay or go. And I've been home several times. And in fact, I went home for 6 months in 2010 and still came back to Europe when I realized that living in Durban with my family as a white South African with very hopelessly unmarketable art skills, even though I've got a degree, meant that I was going to be unemployed. And you know, it's back then also a lot more difficult with internet connections and stuff to do the kind of things we do now. So I have made my life abroad, but when you talk about that homesickness, it's something that it never goes away. I've had it for now since 1999, so we're going on 18 years, okay? It doesn't go away. That longing, you know, when I hear a South African accent, my heart starts to beat faster. I see someone in a South African jersey, it's like an instinctual thing.
You want to hug them, don't you?
I have to do. And the majority of the time they're a tourist who's not even South African. You know, and they're like, no, not just South African jersey, not South African. I'm like, oh, damn, you know, okay. But there is that, you know, what this points out to is there is a very distinct distinctive, beautiful culture, whether you want to say it's the white culture, the Afrikaner culture, the Boer culture, or from my generation, which came out of the post-apartheid era where we came through high school, and for the first time I had friends going into university, which was for me an amazing experience, going from that very segregated way where no black people in my school, to entering university, suddenly black people were allowed to get education alongside white people, and they were amazing. We loved each other for a very brief time. We were just accepting of each other's color differences, of our social differences, of our money differences, and there was that time when we were just so inspired at the promise of what the Rainbow Nation could be, until we realized that we had all been deceived, and that actually the country was worse off after the presidency of Nelson Mandela than it was before. And very sickeningly, we're in a situation where we still sit to this very day and watch this man who killed many people, who actually wasn't a terrorist, getting praised so heavily and spoken about with such reverence, when he didn't even, when he was arrested, Amnesty International wanted to step in on his behalf to help get him out of jail as political prisoner. They couldn't help him because they refused to denounce the use of violence, and violence is never the answer. The ANC is a violent regime. They murder, they kill, they're genociding out the white people of Africa, and this is an agenda that has been written into Jesuit documents, and it's there to read for yourselves. For anyone who wants to see it, go read the Extreme Oath of the Jesuits. It talks about exactly how they want to exterminate the descendants of the Huguenots, which are largely the Boers. The Boers were largely Protestant Calvinists, the enemies of the Roman Catholic Church and the Jesuits. And part of the Counter-Reformation agenda was exterminating and annihilating and eliminating the Protestant Calvinist colonies, which is why we had the war in America. The Civil War actually started because of this. It's the reason why Lincoln was assassinated by Jesuits. It's the reason why we have people like Verwoerd, who was also assassinated by Jesuits, because he was trying to do something good for our country, and he was made out to be the bad person.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Mel, if you look back, I know we shouldn't look back, because that's not the country that it was. It doesn't exist anymore. So we're looking back with a heavy heart at something that probably will never exist again. But it's really hard not to, because it is the most beautiful country. You cannot come from there and not have it ingrained in every molecule of your being. The sunshine, the beautiful beaches, the mountains, just everything. It is so, so beautiful. And that is one of the saddest things that have happened in this last few weeks, is the burning down of the garden route. My heart
That is devastating.
bleeds.
Oh. And then, of course, the donations, the many, many donations that were given out went to the wrong people.
Yes, who lost nothing in that fire.
Yes, who lost absolutely nothing in that fire, but yet demanded those donations from the givers.
But, Leigh, that's exactly the same thing that you're going through at the moment when trying to get donations to Muncieville. The squatter camp on the outskirts of Muncieville that you have to go through to get there, those people are either stealing the donations, slowing you down, walking in front of you so that you have to slow down. They'll steal them off the back of your truck, or stand in line and demand that they get theirs first. And now they're threatening violence against you if you don't give those donations to them. Now,
That's correct.
Yes. Now, for me, Leigh, that is disgusting, because they get state aid, whereas the people in Muncieville do not, and yet they still want everything from you.
We had the mayor, when we gave out, we went and cooked food for the children, especially. We wanted to make sure that those children all have a full belly
just that one day.
My husband and I both cooked and the camp, it was just by pure coincidence. Yes. And he came to us, but he had hordes of people with him. And we were busy dishing up the food, and also Marai was giving out bread that they got from a supermarket. Well, by the time they had left, they had taken every single bun and loaf of bread that was meant for the poor. They took it all. There was nothing left. Luckily, my husband Marius was clever enough to close the pots immediately, and he basically went and sat on the rice pot and said, "No, this is for the children." And we were able to finish feeding the children. But if we bring in loads of donations for those folks, and they are not given, or they steal, they grab, they creep underneath the tables to take the donations, and then when we chase them away, Irene and them were told that they were going to burn down their houses with their children inside. So what do we do? How do we help our own people? We have to then help them as well in order to help our own people. And they take everything, absolutely everything.
You don't get enough donations to even feed
all those the food. No, and it's all gone. It's just gone.
And then you're the one who has to face down those sad little children's eyes who are hungry.
Okay, so the words are just so limiting to express fear and utter horror of the situation. I just want to use this caveat to put a little context into this for people who perhaps are unfamiliar with the subject, so that you understand exactly what is going on here. And that is, South Africa is one of the most vibrant and economically resource-rich countries in the world. Yet, up to 40, or now probably teetering on 50% of the population of South Africa live in absolute poverty. Now, for a long time, the situation has been blamed on white capitalism, except that for the last 20-odd years, since the release of Nelson Mandela, we have had a situation where we have had policies which have been very much in favor of empowering the Black people, which I think is a good idea in terms of we all deserve equal opportunities. However, it went to the extremes of being the opposite of what they claimed apartheid was, where it became exclusionary of the white minority groups through policies of Black economic empowerment. And what you have is a situation now where you've got a whole generation of white South Africans, myself being one of them, who have been forced to leave South Africa because of economic circumstances in order to survive, seek life abroad, seek life elsewhere. And let me tell you, it ain't easy. I feel sorry for refugees who have to leave their country and flee in order to survive, because in a way that's kind of what we did. Okay, yeah, maybe it was a little bit nicer, and I had a ticket paid for by my mommy and daddy, and it wasn't such a bad deal going on a working holiday. But even that is a bit of a joke in itself. That's a story for another time. But the whole point is, it's still a case of when we came over on that working holiday visa, and we had 2 years, all the South Africans who were in Earl's Court, all the backpackers would sit around having drinks going, okay, what are we going to do when that 2 years expires? How are we going to plan to stay here? Yeah. And it was people applying for student visas, people getting companies to sponsor them, people making arrangements, paying $1,000 to an Englishman to marry them. And this is the kind of things that were going on. I mean, this is very much part of the culture of the backpacker community within Earl's Court. I was very much exposed to this. And in fact, it was in Earl's Court that I met my now husband, who was Dutch and had decided to come and work in London at the time. So he was also very much a traveler within a traveler's community, experiencing going through all this, but he had a European passport, so it wasn't an issue for him. But to understand the desperation people had with regards to that time limit, and seeing the desperate measures that people went to, the situations people got themselves into, just so that they could have a piece of paper and not get deported back to South Africa. It became very obvious to me, I suppose at that point, being all on my own, not being surrounded by the beautiful house from Schlange that I grew up in with my parents, where, you know, it's not that obvious a reality. The reality of it all became very clear to me living in those communities and seeing just how desperate people were. And then realizing just how many people that I knew from back home I was running into on the streets in a foreign country. And that started to also freak me out a little, like, hang on, like, it's my whole hometown has relocated, my whole high school year, so kind of relocated to London at one point. I was like, you know, it's such a sad thing that the children have to leave their families behind. And it's the psychological psychosis for someone like myself, as I have decided to not have kids, because they won't have their grandparents around. Okay? They won't have the childhood that I had, growing up with that network, which I know do not have, the infrastructure and support, which I, as a former South African, somewhat refugee in a European country, sure, I've got a spouse of an EU national status, but I'm still a refugee in a foreign country. I realize I do not have the support network around me to facilitate perhaps my own family. And in a way, therein, the genocide is secondarily pernicious, okay? Because it's not just the genocide going on at home. It is the psychological genocide. It's mental sterilization of a whole generation of people who realize that our kids have nothing to inherit.
Yeah.
It's been taken from them.
Yes.
But also, you left for the exact same reasons as what a refugee would leave their country.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely, Leigh. That is absolutely the truth. I mean, I met my husband online, an American, and he came to South Africa to meet me, and we got married. But he stayed there for 2 years, and after the 2 years, being unable to get a job, being a white male over 40, he just said, look here, a man is not supported by his wife. We're going back to my country where I can do things the right way. I never planned on going, but it is only when you get to another country that you realize how much fear you live under in South Africa. You suddenly take this deep sigh and wonder, what is it that's missing? Because you don't have to have situational awareness every second of every day. You don't have to sleep with one eye and both ears open. You don't have to lock and bar your house every night and turn the alarm on. You don't have 8-foot walls topped with electric wire. I look out my windows every day. I don't even have a picket fence around my house. I look straight out on the park and I think, my Lord, how did this happen in my life, that I'm not a prisoner in my own home? You don't have to lock your doors when driving. You don't have to go through red lights at night because you're scared to stop. You don't have to be scared of every policeman in the street in case A, he's not a policeman, or B, he's going to do you some damage. The freedom from fear is a thing that you cannot describe to anybody who's never lived with it. And even now I'm neurotic. My doors are always locked. I'm neurotic about those things, and I don't think I'll ever change. But for me, to see my granddaughters riding their bicycles in the street, going out in the street by themselves to a friend's house 2 blocks down, is something that you no longer see in South Africa and have not seen for more than 20 years. And it is it's worth the heartache. It's worth the homesickness. It's worth the strange food, the strange accents, the not being understood when you talk to people on the phone. It is worth every minute of it, because those innocent little girls do not deserve to be raped, murdered, or their body parts used for muti.
Absolutely. And this isn't the reality of what's going on in South Africa. Is we have a cultural genocide happening, which is being worked in at a much deeper level. There, for an international audience watching this, they may be wondering, oh, well, it's not happening here. And I do want to say that you have to put those attitudes aside. Understand, and please, if anyone doubts this, you can download a free copy of my ebook, The South African Guide to the Global Conspiracy, and go and read this for yourself and look at the evidence. South Africa has historically always been used as a political testing ground. And whatever is going on in South Africa will soon be happening somewhere else, okay? Yes. So people in the world need to watch out what's going on there and have a look. Leigh, what the situation you're describing, man, it's turning into Lord of the Flies down there, that you've got that going on, okay? People of the world, look at that, okay? Where the food that is being donated to the poor is being taken before it gets to the poor by people who want to lynch the good people who put their lives at risk to deliver the food. I mean, it's gotten to a point of guerrilla warfare. Yes. When you start having your food shipments and help aid shipments hijacked by malevolent sources or taken by people it wasn't intended for. And then the real people who are suffering just suffer even more. That is for me the true symptoms of ultimate and utter disaster. And that is where we're at. I just want to talk a little bit more about, if you can give us some background about what's been going on in the garden route. I'm very interested to hear a bit more about that.
Well, there was this massive storm in Cape Town, which is not called the Cape of Storms for nothing. Massive, massive storm, a really bad one that we haven't seen for many, many years. As I understand it, and I could be giving the wrong figure, but as I understand it, there were waves 25 foot high washing over Cape Town. Now, at the same time that terrible storm hit, displaced people in Cape Town, washed away cars, washed away homes, washed away all kinds of things, just up the garden route, which is the tourist attraction in South Africa. It is 400 and something miles of the most beautiful scenery. You have the ocean on the one side of you at all times. You have mountains that go up. You go through apple orchards and grape farms and wineries, and it is the most incredible, beautiful place. Now, Knysna is it's a quaint little town. It's just so beautiful. You can go there, you can rent a houseboat, live on a houseboat for your holidays. It's beautiful. It verges onto the Knysna forest where the Knysna elephants come from, etc. At the same time that the storm was wiping out Cape Town, some clever people decided to set fire to Knysna. Now, I heard today that it was 4 EFF, Economic Freedom Fighters, have been arrested in conjunction and being accused of setting that particular fire. I don't know how true it is. I haven't had time to research it, but I read an article today saying, anyway, they set this town alight. So they burnt down homes, businesses, farms. Now, a spark supposedly flew 200 miles and set the next town on fire. So there was Knysna, Sagefield, up to Port Elizabeth, 400 and something miles away, all at the same time, burning merrily. The whole garden route was on fire while we have this monster storm blowing in waves and rain and whatever. But according to everybody, it was a stray spark that flew 400 miles and set Port Elizabeth alight. Right. So it takes a week for the government people to come, especially President Zuma, to come to Knysna and look at the damages there. In the meantime, some very kind people had gotten donations of blankets, clothes, food. DHL gave the transport freely, and they filled DHL trucks and sent them down the garden route to help the people who have got nothing Their businesses are gone. Their homes are gone. Their cars are gone. Everything is gone. They were left literally in what they were wearing because they were evacuated from Plettenberg Bay, from Knysna, from Sedgefield. They evacuated the whole town. So they sent these things down to the Cape now to help these people. But the Democratic Alliance decided that they would be in control of handing out the donations. And the other people arrived from hundreds of miles around where they were not affected at all by these fires with their wheelbarrows and their donkey carts and took the donations. And the whites who had been unbelievably dispossessed were at the back of the queue and got nothing. And that is the story of those fires.
It's heartbreaking. Absolutely.
I can't, Mel. I can't. It is unbelievable that you have to understand. They say there are 4.5 million whites in South Africa. I do not believe it because 1 million have left. According to their own records, 1 million have left. Then there's another 800,000 to 1 million living in white camps. So there's 2.5 million productive white South Africans. How many of those are children and how many of those are elderly that are not working? So essentially, there's under 2 million working white people in a country with 70 million and more, because I believe there are 30 million illegal Zimbabweans and Mozambicans. So there's approximately, whoever knows about the figures in South Africa, but approximately 100 million black people, colored people and Indians, and 2 million, possibly 2 million working white South Africans. They donated, those people, donated truckfuls of goods, the same as they did when the farmers' animals were dying. They donated hay, they donated water, they took it to collection points to help the people in the drought. But in this case, the people who it was meant for, once more, got nothing. And Leigh must tell you, Mel, about shiploads of stuff being sent from another country to South Africa. That will make you cry even more. It's horrific. It's horrific what is going on. Leigh got a shipload of items donated. Tell the story, Leigh. Tell what happened.
Well, at that time, the textile companies in South Africa were on strike. The streets were flooding with second-hand clothing that have been coming in from the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and the US and Canada. And it was actually better quality by far than buying at a retail store in South Africa. So they went on strike and demanded that no donated clothing come into South Africa, which then it was approved. So by that time, we had been given a huge container shipped by ship to our organization. Well, it ended up that we had to pay in taxes 70,000 Rand to have it released. But we were only allowed to take certain goods out of the container. Like, for example, maybe food. We weren't allowed to take out any shoes, and we also weren't allowed to take out any clothing. So,
and for me, it's totally ridiculous. So people overseas with only the best,
it was futile for
to South Africa
and to even try and receive the donation.
Exactly, Leigh. A charity that is battling to survive and feed its people has to pay 80,000 Rand to get some of the goods out of that container. It is an absolute damn disgrace.
Yeah, of course. And then that 80,000 Rand actually, if it's coming as a donation, it's not something that you're entering into a commercial contract over, so they can't tax you on it. Okay, so it's an illegal tax. And I've read an interesting article, funny, on your page, Karin, about the debt that South Africa still has to pay off.
Yes.
And where is that money coming from? And who made those financial deals in the first place that the taxpayer now has to settle? And why are the various financial ministers kind of missing when it's now due for payment?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's just, I kind of have to ask the question, how long can this continue until there is something so majorly disastrous? I mean, what are we looking at? What is it going to take before we have a turnaround? What are we looking at, ladies? Do you think we're looking at proper all-out annihilation, or do you think there is any hope to the situation at this stage?
I just want to give you figures because I got these this morning.
Yes.
From the 1st of January to the 18th of June of this year, there have been 212, probably more because not all of them are reported and we can only pick up bits and pieces. 212 attacks in the 169 days this year. That's farm attacks. That's not urban. Total farm murders, 48 farmers murdered so far this year. And town attacks, 22, my Lord, I can't even add this up, 60, 110, 132, 162, 170 farm attacks, urban attacks. And from 100, oh my God, I can't do this, 22, 42, 49, 50, 56 murders that we know of. Now, a murder in South Africa, as you know, is not a straight out drive-by shooting like you have in Chicago or something like that. A murder in South Africa is originally being tortured for hours. They will wait in your home for you to come home. They'll tie up the father. Sometimes they cut off his eyelid so that he can't look away. They will tie the father up. While they rape, burn, and mutilate the woman, a little boy of 12 was drowned in boiling water. Another one was found hanging in the garage. They burn you with hot irons. They pour melted wax down your throat. They pour oil down your throat and set it alight.
They drilled the other lady with a drill.
An electric drill, 86-year-old woman. They drilled holes in her for hours and hours and hours. And then they leave, and mostly they have stolen nothing. So every one of those murders that I have just spoken to you about is not just somebody who is relatively painlessly shot. It is not that at all. It is a long, horrific, painful experience. And often they leave the father alive so that they can prove that you are powerless. They can prove to white male South Africans that they're unable to protect their families. And for me, the greater tragedy of all of this is the people who survive. Because I cannot imagine being a father, knowing that it's your job to protect your family. And you have to look at yourself in the mirror every single day and relive in your head the tape of what they did to your family. I cannot imagine a fate worse than that. And South African men are proud protectors of their family and their property. And for a man like that to be left living
broken,
I can't. I have no words for it. And it's the problem with this is that it is getting more and more every single day. It is not slowing down. It is getting worse. And of course, with the cries of the EFF and the ANC to take the farms without compensation, just take them. And the economic freedom fighters and the Black Land First crowd just saying, do what it takes, whatever it takes, by any means necessary, do it. Things are so out of hand that I don't see any good end to this whatsoever.
Well, we have 30,000 farmers currently in South Africa, and we have 20,000 farms on the market at present.
Yeah.
20,000 farmers are trying desperately to sell off their land, get whatever they can, and many of them are trying to leave the country where they'll go any place, anywhere they can to make sure that their families are safe. So, you know, the government refuses to see that this is not normal crime. The statistics say it's normal crime, but yet they are denying that the torture is going on.
No,
If you have someone that is attacked on a farm, and say, for example, he was stabbed multiple times, he lands up in hospital, and eventually in a government hospital, and obviously they do not look after you, and you get infection. They do not say that you died from multiple stab wounds. They say you died from an infection.
And often of natural causes, shot 4 times.
And often of natural causes, that's correct.
Natural causes. And then, Leigh, on top of all of that, the morgue people are now the morgues in South Africa are unable to cope at the best of times because there are 51 murders per day. Well, according to state statistics, so probably more. But 51 state admitted murders per day in South Africa. That's black on black and black on white. So the morgues have been unable to cope, totally unable to cope. Now they're on strike. So the bodies are lining up in the corridors. It's the most horrific thing. I read this morning that you're going to have to pay 80,000 to get your body, your loved one's body out of the 80,000 rand to get your body out the morgue.
Correct.
Because now they can't perform autopsies. So they've called in the army to help with that, and we all know how that's going to go. But anyway, so on top of everything else, there is this desperate situation where the morgues can't even take it. It doesn't matter where you look, what subject you touch. It makes no difference what you try and talk about it. Everything is a horrific mess in South Africa. And there's nowhere you can look where there's good news.
I would like to just also give a point to people who don't understand the level of violence and torture that is going on. Because they don't understand what's driving and motivating it. It's not a case of a bunch of people rock up at a farm and then just decide to randomly torture people. This is something that is pre-planned, that they are trained to do. It is cult ritualism in its most pure form. It's dark satanic evilness where you teach people to hurt other people like that and torture. Okay, there are negative entities in the world that loose energy of this kind of low vibrational frequency, which gets given out when people are being tortured and hurt. And they are definitely working at a level that it's feeding some real darkness. There is a purpose behind why they torture these people. It is because it feeds an ultimate darkness, which ultimately feeds the psychosis of the fear that ingrains South Africa, which again brings down the vibration, brings down the hope, and just breaks people down slowly but surely, eating away at their souls, at their spirits, until they're just so utterly broken that they can be dominated and suppressed. But what people don't understand, okay, is that particularly if you know what the Boers and the Afrikaners are like, is that we just have such a strong spirit. The human spirit of our people cannot be underestimated, okay? And we will not go down easily. And this is the one thing that gives me even if it's just the smallest spark of belief that something can be done, is knowing my people, knowing that we are a resourceful bunch of people. If you look at what we have had to, over the centuries, endure, okay, and what a tough country Africa is. We are some of the most resourceful people out there. South Africans are some of the most forward in terms of solutions orientated, always being pushed to the very edge because of the extreme survival situations. I actually find people who have had their lives very easy quite limited in the way they're able to process challenging situations and come to solutions. Whereas, those of us who've had to go through economic hardship, had to overcome the kind of fearing and programming you go through in South Africa, you have a perspective that's slightly wiser and not being derogatory to those that don't. But there is a kind of knowledge and world wariness, and particularly, I'd say for people like you and me, Karin, who have had that multiple cultural experience. And I mean, that starts in South Africa, and I give an idea for those who are international. The hometown that I came from, being Durban, apart from being in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, Zululand, I grew up in Umhlanga, which is just on the cusp of Zululand. So you've got a big Zulu nation. We've also got the biggest Indian population outside India. So yes. It's not, and then we've got the British, who are very strong colonialists in Durban, and then of course a very strong Boer contingency that come in from Pietermaritzburg, okay, because that's where the sort of Boer provinces and stuff were. So we have this real cultural melting pot of influences from everywhere. And then of course the food, being Cape Malay, you try to identify where they come from. South African food can be traced to every corner of the world. Yeah. We are the most multicultural country, and yet, even though we have this cultural awareness and understanding, what is really, really sad to still witness at this point when things are so absolutely going to shit is that some people are still absolutely falling into the trap of the artificial mechanisms of division, such as racism.
Yes, yes.
And this is more important than now than ever, if there is ever to be any hope, that whether you be black, white, pink or blue, you put the external locus of identity inside and understand that inside each cavity that we inhabit is a living sentient soul that deserves freedom, that deserves the right to survive, that deserves not to be tortured, that deserves to have just basic common dignity and decency afforded to them, because, my God, don't all human beings deserve that? Even if they are white South Africans.
Yes, Mel, you are so right. Leigh, I think you are better placed to do this. I think what you need to do, leading on from that we deserve human dignity. Leigh Munseyville is an absolute picture of how the government does not think that whites deserve any dignity. So maybe you can explain to us how Munseyville came to be, what it actually is, because that illustrates so much, Mel, what you're talking about, that we deserve human dignity, but the government doesn't think we deserve it.
No, because we need to pay back. We need to suffer for our fathers' transgressions and apartheid. And even though our children were born in a so-called free and fair South Africa, they will not be given, or they will not live the free and fair South Africa. The government decided to take a group of white poor people and put them on an old landfill. Now, in South Africa, we have, I'm sure in every single country, you have building laws. We have to all adhere to those building laws. But the municipality decided to put these people on an old landfill, untested soil, with hardly any water, no electricity, and the shacks that were provided was put on bare soil, so there was no floor whatsoever, no window. It was made out of corrugated iron, sheeting, and a door. Now, if you know, Mel, you've been in South Africa, Karin, you too, you know the heat that we experience. Can you imagine having tiny little children living in a corrugated iron shack that your own government has provided for your little family? Fighting on a daily basis to get these people sanitation and water, just basic extra two taps, the porta potty system. The children still, to this day, bath in little buckets. They heat up water in a donkey system. It is winter now. Those corrugated iron shacks are icy, icy, icy cold. Now, Mel, you've spoken about the solution, and you are so very right. Being an ex-South African, we are very resilient. We were born with it. I think it's in our blood. We know how to make a plan. And that's why I've realized that being and working in these camps, these people are stagnant. They are learning to beg. They are learning to feel sorry for themselves. They are sitting and basically expecting people to feel sorry for them. And I started a farm project. We are still in the early beginning stages. We've built 5 houses. And we want to rescue some of these families and reskill them. Not necessarily to go and work for a boss, but maybe make preserves and sell them, do welding, reskill the father, send him for a course that he can make stuff and sell from home. Not having to depend on other people or to work for a boss. And that's where you spoke about the solution. The solution is that we need to get pride back into our families and teach them that, yes, it is not fair what's happening to you, but you can get up, dust yourself off, and we can work together, reskill yourself, and make the best of what it is. It is what it is, and we can all work hard and try and keep ourselves safe in numbers, because being in a farming community as we are, the more people we have, the better equipped we will be to defend ourselves in the first place, and give them their dignity back at the end of the day, and teach your children to have that dignity. We are a strong people and we can get through this. Yes, we are going through a horrific time. The murders are really bad, but there is something that we can do. We need to take that focus off the bad and put it into a new positive spin, and show our families that it's possible to survive, whether they will go to America or wherever, or stay in South Africa and work. It's doable. It's possible.
Yes, this whole white guilt thing, we need to address that as well, because this is something that at the moment, what I see a lot of, the opinions of these educated blacks who come onto these forums and go, yes, but you're getting what you deserve. You came and you created AIDS and this and that and whatever else. You're getting what you deserve. No, I just want to say that, yes, okay, we had European people who engaged in slavery, and slavery on any level is not good, okay? But it wasn't just white people. We had the Chinese who were engaged in slavery. Okay, we had the people in Yemen and Iran who actually imported more white slaves than black slaves were ever taken out of Africa. They imported them there. The only reason you don't see the remnants of them there is because most of the men had their balls cut off, so they couldn't reproduce. It's not like you have black slaves who are now still in America, the black people who are living in America today, because they weren't muted, okay? So they were still able to reproduce, and you've got their descendants there today. That's why you don't have that in those other countries. So there's no record of them. But we've had every nation throughout histories, as far back as you can trace humanity, you can trace slavery. It is not a white on black thing, all right? What we have at the moment is a psychosis where we are being told, and I do want to say this because touching on that, have the dignity, have the pride. Don't feel that it's, you're bad because, you come from this group of people who once persecuted somebody else and now, you're bearing all the karma for it. First off, that sins of the father bullshit, okay? That is religious dogma that is so outdated. Forget about that. Trust me, I ain't responsible for the sins of my father. My biological father was an arse, and I don't take responsibility for anything he did, okay? Bottom line. And my stepdad raised me, and thank God for that. So screw the sins of the father malarkey, okay? We need to get over this stuff. We need to realize that we can't feel bad, or that because we're white, we can't believe in this, that it's because of what we've done in the past. let me tell you, there have been transgressions in every race, in every culture group, in every nation. There are groups of people who take, and there are groups of people who suffer. And to be ignorant enough to label that at one color demographic or one religious group or one nation is exactly what they want us to do. They want us to be blaming the wrong candidates instead of looking to the higher levels as to where all this manipulation is really coming from and seeing how it cascades down. The whole trick here is to keep us fighting each other so that we don't realize where the real manipulation is coming in from. And I, for one, think one of the most important things that we need to do as a race, as a say Caucasian. I don't even like to use the word race because I believe we're all the human race. It doesn't matter what color you are. But as a Caucasian white South African, I've had to come across the allegations, particularly when I was working in London and stuff. People automatically assume because I'm white I must be a racist, or because there's this preconceived hereditary prejudices that come and get projected onto you. And I would like to say, first off, to people who like me, don't allow that kind of thing. Address these issues. It is your duty to re-educate and reorientate people. The facts, as I say, you want a book, you want to look at the facts, please download a free e-copy of my book. It's all there. Use the stuff verbatim. I do not care. But understand who you are. Understand that this whole blaming thing and this whole white guilt thing, it's really what they want. It doesn't benefit anybody, and we should be proud of who we are. We should be proud of the civilization that we brought to the continent in terms of the infrastructure. And bless Helen Ziller recently had to resign and apologize for making a comment, which was very valid. Yes, colonialism did give us infrastructure. You guys would probably still be on donkey carts if it wasn't for colonialism. No disrespect, but it's the way progress is. Sadly, even within places like Europe, where we don't have the whole colonial baggage, you still have a case of the very, very wealthy getting wealthier and wealthier at the expense of the poor, who are just getting poorer and poorer and feeding whatever they get to the rich. It's not a South African problem. It's a global problem. South Africa is just the most extreme example of it. And what we're seeing now is the crescendo and acceleration of what will happen eventually everywhere if we don't actually do something. And this, we've really just got to do something.
Yeah, I know. If you don't mind, there are two things that have really struck me recently. They're both from posts on Facebook. I have permission to use them, just not mention names because they're still in South Africa. And these are cries from South Africans' hearts. And I think it kind of, because they're there and they're living it every day, it very much sums up what is really a humanitarian crisis. So this lady said, it's taken me a while to decide to post this, not because I'm afraid of speaking out, but because I don't want anyone to think I'm selfish or heartless. Recent weeks have seen hideous tragedy unfold in London, where many innocent people lost their lives or were injured or emotionally shattered. Melbourne had their own small taste of it, and not too long ago, Paris was subjected to terrorist activity, resulting in death, heartache, fear, and devastation. My heart goes out to those countries, the families affected, the victims' families, the people touched by those ghastly events, and they're all in my prayers, that I assure you. But then, I watch in fascination as thousands hold silent vigils. Thousands of wreaths and flowers are laid at appropriate points. Televised interviews, magazine articles, newspaper front pages, Facebook posts. Wherever you turn, the latest tragedy is featured there. People are broken, upset, angry, and determined to stand together to stamp out these atrocities. Facebook profiles change to the flag of the victimized country, and worldwide pleas are heard to pray for London, or whichever country or town it is at the time. People speak out and publicly announce that they will stand together and not live in fear. Leaders of the affected countries and other countries worldwide speak out against the terrorism, some in plain and simple terms. And that's the way it should be. The world should come together as one, where there's starvation, terrorism, poverty, or any other tragedy. It's comforting to know that so many millions are behind you, standing with you, supporting you, and there to help. Nobody should have to live in fear, frightened to carry on with life or step out their own front door. Nobody should sleep with one eye open or be afraid in their own home. And then, in stark contrast, we look at our own country, our precious and beautiful South Africa, and we bow our heads in sorrow. Our hearts break and our anger boils. Puzzled. Let me help you out. 51 murders, 3 children killed, 49 attempted murders, 109 rapes, 363 armed robberies, 142 sexual offenses, 451 assaults, 41 hijackings, 686 housebreakings, 147 vehicles stolen, 700 drug-related crimes per day. Yes, in one day. This is what happens every single day in our once amazing South Africa. And those are just the ones reported, the ones we know about. Many more go unnoticed or unreported due to lack of facilities, lack of service, intimidation, or fear. But that's not all. 1 in 3 children suffer severe abuse. 200 common robberies occur daily. Every 8 hours, a woman is abused by an intimate partner. Babies and small children are raped, several each day. Our farmers are viciously and cruelly attacked, tortured, and murdered at the rate of 26 farms in 2 months. And that's just the crime. Government and municipal institutions are without funding and for the most part without capabilities. Lawlessness and an ineffective justice system are the order of the day. Bribery and corruption thrive, and funding is withdrawn from old age homes, medical facilities, children's homes, and animal care facilities. Our latest example is that the horse and dogs of the Metro Police are left without food and hay for days at a time. And KwaZulu-Natal has no oncologists in government hospitals, not one. A huge number of law enforcement officers are corrupt, not to mention the government itself. Furthermore, the emotional well-being of every citizen is at stake. Almost everyone I know has lost either friends or family, if not to violent crime, then to immigration. People move to other countries and start over, leaving behind family, friends, and everything they've ever known. Why? Because they're tired of living in fear, because they want a future for their children. Families are fragmented, and the whole family unit is not as it should be. And an ever-shrinking number of stalwarts stand their ground, hoping, praying, believing that somehow things will get better. And where is the world in all this? Does everyone's Facebook status change to South Africa's flag? Are there worldwide cries of pray for South Africa? Where are the wreaths and flowers laid for our 51 murdered souls every day? What about their minute of silence? Why aren't world leaders crying out in shock and outrage at the carnage that is our country? Apart from a handful, where's the television coverage of these atrocities? How many newspapers have ever had these abhorrent statistics or happenings as their front page? How many magazines in the world have covered our farm killings or child rape? And when you watch the news, internationally I'm talking, do you ever see mention of any of this? If the people outside of South Africa don't hear about this disaster from friends or family inside the country, then they don't hear about it at all. Why? Is it because the floors of our country would be littered with so many flowers and wreaths that it would be impossible to walk? Is it because so many moments of silence would be required that whole hours of complete silence would follow? Is it because of fear of retaliation if they dare speak out or print the truth? Or have those people, those that know, simply become so blasé about it that it's just another part of everyday life? That's how South Africa is, so everyone just accepts it. Let me tell you what it's like from a South African's point of view. We're constantly afraid. We look over our shoulder every day of our lives and suspect fellow pedestrians or individuals who may just be passing by. We live behind high walls and we add razor wire or electric fences on top. We attend funerals and we say countless goodbyes at airports. Those who can afford it arm alarms, set beams in their gardens, and triple lock doors and gates. Every sound makes you jump, look, fear. We avoid certain areas and try not to place ourselves in situations where we know what could happen. We watch our sidewalks, public areas, schools, and hospitals fall apart. We pray we don't get sick because so many of us have no medical aid. We know we won't get help if we go to our local police station, so we start our own organizations. And on top of it all, we now have the honor of being junk status and being in a recession. So we scrimp and save, go without, and cut corners whenever we can. Yes, there are exceptions like with anything, but for the vast majority of us, life is difficult, sad, filled with fear, and a deep sense of desperation. We are living with disaster every day. Mothers lose children, wives lose husbands, death, chaos, heartache, and catastrophe are a part of our everyday lives. I'm sure I can hear the cynics saying, so leave it. If it's so terrible, why stay? Well, not all of us can leave. It takes money, qualifications, and an enormous amount of emotional strength, leaving behind many we know we will never see again. Just so you know, Skype and WhatsApp aren't quite the same as in the flesh. Secondly, why should we leave? I, for one, was born in South Africa. I am South African, just like anyone else who was born here, regardless of color or culture. I love a country. It lives deep within my heart. And while those that have immigrated might not regret it because they're living a better and safer life, they left under duress, not because they wanted to. We are being forced out of the country of our birth, the country that is our home. And I challenge anyone, anywhere in the world, to tell me that doesn't suck. There is so much beauty in our South Africa that it would be impossible to list. The people, their spirit, the land, the scenery, the oceans, the beaches, the mountains, the wildlife. The list goes on and on. If you've lived here or even visited, you'll know what I mean. Our country is magnificent, but we as a nation made a decision in 1995 that we thought was good for the good of our country. We boldly stood up and stood as one and said, this is our country and this is the way forward. In case you're still not sure, it hasn't quite worked out that way. And so I ask with broken heart and heartfelt pleas, pray for us, pray for peace, pray for the correct leadership, pray for our future. Take 5 minutes of your day and pray for the turmoil we experience 24/7. Don't mock. Don't criticize. Don't tell us we should leave. Think about how it must feel to live here. There are countries experiencing terrorism and war, poverty or starvation, disaster or illness. We live with all of that, day in and day out. We don't have terrorists doing this. This is being done by our own people and by our so-called leaders. But because we are South Africans, we fight on. We hope, we believe. So pray for us, no matter who or where you are. I beseech you, pray for South Africa. I couldn't say any of that better than in those words.
Yeah, that was amazing. You're going to have to send that to me so I can publish it along with this interview.
I will.
That is, I mean, I'm wet.
I can't. I can't. It said it so well, and I know when one is on air, one shouldn't read a thing, but that is the heartfelt plea from somebody who lives it every day. And which of us can say it better than that? You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And we all identify with that. I identify with everything there. You know, the saying goodbye at the airports. You know, every time I see my family, I've got to say goodbye. I cry. It takes me weeks to come right because you just don't know when you'll see them again. If they'll live through the next, however many years before they've got enough money to come see you again. And
my mom and dad didn't live through it. No, my dad was shot. My mom died. I just come out of hospital with surgery. I couldn't go back. So I know. We've no way to even try and tell anybody how it feels.
We've learned to live for the small little moments, when your family do get together and you do see your children or you do see your parents. We've learned to appreciate the little moments that you do have is so absolutely precious to each and every one of us that maybe that's how, we should live all the time, but it's not always possible and people don't really think of that. But living in South Africa, you realize that your family and your friends and your community mean the absolute world to you, and you cherish every single moment that you do have with your family because you never know what is going to happen the next day or the next week or the next month or year to come.
Yeah.
I do want to say for those people, I'm one of the people that left, and I did consider trying to go home several times. In fact, I once went home for 6 months and then left again. I've often looked back and regretted my decision to leave. And I do want to speak very honestly about this. Perhaps if I could do it all over again, I would have still gone traveling because I don't ever regret that. Traveling, I think, has taught me so much, as it does anybody who does it, where, engage it with full flow. But ultimately, I would like to have been able to grow old in my home country with my family around me, and that choice is no longer open to me. And that's been my dream for a long time. As I said, I've tried to return home many times. I've never properly integrated into the cultures that I've lived in. I've lived in London. I didn't last there. I was there for about 10 years. I've now lived in Holland for almost 9 years, and I honestly still feel like a big star-shaped object being squeezed into a square little box, and I don't fit in. I'm much louder, more exuberant than your average European person because we're passionate, South Africans. And it's our culture. And that's never going to change about me. But we still struggle with the fact that we rub up against things perhaps in an uncomfortable way. And it's been almost 18 years for me, and I'm still not adjusted to not being in my home country. I still dream about being able to go back there and live there, live out the rest of my life there, and raise a family there and give them what I had as a child, which was an amazing childhood, even with all the drama and stuff. And man, we always had crime in South Africa. Yes, it's gotten worse, and there were some horrible things that happened even when I was living there. It was never perfect, but it's just gotten progressively worse and worse. Even with all of that, I would still, I think if I could do it again, perhaps love to move back home. But I had the same problem with you, Karin, is that I've got an amazing husband who is my life partner, and I couldn't possibly leave him here, and he couldn't get a job as a white non-South African in South Africa, which is one of the reasons why the return has not been possible for us. And ultimately, the grass ain't greener on the other side. For those people who are thinking of leaving, I want to be honest with you. If it seems like it's greener on the other side, it's only because there's more shit there, okay? Trust me. Living here and doing what I do, being a South African, they don't like, in Europe, they don't, at the moment there's a huge xenophobia that's going on, and they do not like foreigners. It doesn't matter that I'm Caucasian, it doesn't matter that I'm not Muslim. They have an issue with foreigners. It's almost impossible if you're not Dutch to get a job here. for example, because if there's a choice between you and a Dutch person, they will choose a Dutch person. Okay, they're very much about looking after their own before the foreigners because of the immigration problems here and all that kind of thing. That's kind of feeding this social substructure of division that's currently being played out between various groups. So leaving South Africa and trying to then start another country is very, very, very tough. When people say to me, what shall I do? Should I stay? Should I go? And I said, you know what, if I had the chance to do it again, I think maybe I would have dug my heels in and fought back. I would have. I think maybe that's what I would have done. That being said, I wouldn't have met my husband, and him being Dutch, it's not a possibility for us to live there. So I have no regrets about my partner and my life choice that way. I'm very, very blessed to have a man who has always treated me with the utmost respect and been a truly brilliant partner to journey my life with. And I've got to be grateful for what we have, and I say that to everybody, that yes, things may be tough there, but also be grateful for the things you do have there, which is, okay, you've got a lot of amazing weather. The weather is horrible here in Europe. The food is way better than there. Enjoy it while it's still there. There's just so many wonderful. The people are generally a lot nicer. You know, I can't tell you how beautiful the spirit of South African people is. The sense of humor, the playfulness. Just they're a, you know. I always remember my childhood when I was with groups of friends, laughter, okay, a lot of laughter and huge amounts of fun. Be it pool party, barbecue, day at the beach, day at the rugby, it was always just fun. I don't have that here, okay, that's all gone. And it's never come back, no matter how long I've tried to recreate the experience, even with other South Africans around me. It's just not quite the same, and you never get that back. And people perhaps now in a frightened state thinking, oh, my children, oh, you know, what about the future? Or well, let's jump ship and go overseas. There is a lot to give up. And I guess in a way I beat myself up about the fact perhaps I abandoned my people, and I should have stayed and dug my heels in.
Yes.
So I do want to say you have to live with that guilt, looking back and seeing what's happening. If you do decide to go, because you never lose. It doesn't matter how many years you're out of South Africa, you never stop being South African. Okay? You never stop being South African. Even people don't understand what that means. You know, even when I go to shop, now lady behind the counter, oh, wait, you British? No, I'm South African.
Yeah.
White people in South Africa? Yes. Yes, the whole white culture of South Africans, you know, living, not European colonists, we're South Africans. I am African, okay, very distinctly African. I have a South African passport. You know, I don't have, and my ancestry goes back many, many generations. So for me, I identify with that, and I think it's culturally insensitive in a lot of ways. There's a lot of ignorance about the way things have played out, and there's still a huge impression, and I know you'll agree to this, Karin, from people abroad about the status quo in South Africa. People are almost still sort of 20 years behind in a way. You know, they still think that, you know, the ANC is a good thing.
Yes.
You know, and that South Africa is the epitome of freedom and justice.
Yeah.
You know, that we're supposedly, you know, for whatever PR campaigns and spinned out about Mandela across the world's mainstream media. They're still believing in that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, everybody's still in belief of the Rainbow Nation, and they still have the tingling of the new birth of South Africa, the new, how can I put it? Karin, you have a better way of putting it.
It's great hope for the future.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be beautiful now.
Beautiful and sunny, and but it's not. It's not the case at all. And trying to get that wonderful utopia out of their minds to the reality that's actually going on is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Although I must say thank you to people like you, Karin, and yourself, Leigh, More and more people are actually realizing what's going on there, particularly those people who are kind of waking up to the bigger picture and the patterns that are persistent across the world, and realizing the extreme examples, South Africa being one of them. Being, when we talk about just day-to-day living, the rich and the poor, here we've got a country, possibly one of the most resource-rich countries in the world, and yet we've got a situation where half the population is in utter poverty, and the other half of the population is so shit scared that they're going to lose everything to those who are in poverty.
Yeah, so they close their eyes totally, and they live behind their gated communities, and they drive in their tinted window cars down a main highway so they don't pass the camps, and they go to work, and they make a lot of money, and they have a foreign visa in their passport and money stashed offshore, and everything is beautiful in the Rainbow Nation until it hits them in their pockets, and then it's not so beautiful anymore. But Mel, on the other hand, you and I can console ourselves with this thing. Had we not left, we would not be able to do what we do. We would not have the freedom to draw attention to the utter crap disaster that our country has become. Not that I want to do it. I assure you, it is not my life's quest. It is not how what I thought I would be doing at the age of 63. But we wouldn't be able to do it. And it's people like you and I that have the freedom, thank the Lord, to do what we do that can maybe, possibly, in the not too distant future, help the people who are left behind, who are trapped there, who cannot get out even if they want to. And if it was not for our freedom, nobody would be saying a word. So we can console ourselves with that at least we didn't get free and turn our backs on those people.
I agree.
Yes.
I don't know what else to say. Yeah. It's the one consolation that I've got is I couldn't do what I'm doing were I still living there.
To us in South Africa, you guys are the heroes. You, Mel and Karin, are the ones that are willing to speak about this and give us a platform and a voice to talk about it, because nobody else is willing. Nobody else is wanting to take up the subject. Everybody's focused on all kinds of other issues. I'm not saying it's not important, but if it weren't for you, I don't know, not many people would have known what our people are going through.
I must just say that one of the reasons I set up this network was specifically because I wanted to draw attention to what was going on in South Africa and be a place where that could be done without fear of duress. And be, I suppose as well, for the experience that I've been through and the balanced outlook I have, not being a hater. And I am a person of unlimited compassion and love. And the huge capacity for forgiveness of even my greatest enemies. I've been able to look at the situation with complete compassion and go, okay, let's not be angry. Let's look at what we can do to help to heal the perceptions of broken hearts, bring them together so that the hatred ain't getting us anywhere, okay? And to do that from a place of love and compassion. Yes, Karin, what you were saying about how we couldn't do this. Speaking to my mother last week on Skype, and I was explaining to her the real situation behind ISIS, and she just looked at me and she says, "Thank goodness you're not in this country, my girl. If you opened your mouth, you'd be in jail."
Yes. Yes.
I
know, Mel. I have been told by South African politicians, don't even try and come home. Don't even try. You'll be arrested before you leave the airport because I'm banned in South Africa. They hate me with an unbelievable passion.
Yeah, my book is banned in South Africa, and I don't even know that if I can go in there and not be arrested at the airport like yourself, Karin. I'm not sure what my options are when entering the country.
Yes. So I think that we have to draw some solace from that we are not like the others that have left and have said, okay, now I'm safe. I'm turning my back on it.
Shame on them as well.
Yes, shame on them.
Here in The Hague, okay, and I'm going to do a name and shame here, okay, and I am also very tolerant and forgiving, so it's not that I'm holding a grudge against anybody when I say this, but I have to say, there is a South African community living in The Hague. The South African embassy here regularly hosts parties. I get the invite. I do not attend. I tell you why. Because I cannot stand that crowd of people, their ignorance towards South Africa. The one guy in this crowd has just set up a Springbok bar in South Africa, and he uses Zoom as space to advertise the Christmas menu, okay, to get people to book their corporate dinners sent out on a flyer by email. I wanted to vomit, literally, okay. I do not gel with the group of South African expats that live in The Hague because of their utter ignorance towards South Africa on every level. Okay, all they care about is sport and beer. Okay, and that is the general culture of South Africa that I remember when I was there. That was pretty much what most people cared about back then. But the bottom line is we're in tough times now. Okay, we now need to start actually, taking a bit of responsibility for all the stuff that's kicking down. And that means on the international community as well. Living here in The Hague, it's a powerhouse of Europe. Right? If every one of those people who live here, who are South African, who have had the opportunity to get away, we came together and lobbied as a group.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
None of them are interested. And shame on you. I hope you watch this. Those of you know who you are. I've spoken with you guys before. All right. They don't want to do anything. And it's shameful. It really hurts my soul. And to be honest with you, nowadays, if half of them walk past me in the street, I wouldn't even raise my hand to wave at them. I'm that disgusted of them.
Yes.
It breaks my heart when you try and reach out to the expat community and they are just I'm going to say it maybe in an ugly way. They give you an Abyssinian mountain goat look. As if saying, what are you talking about? South Africa is wonderful, and they're wanting to be politically correct wherever they are, and they don't want to be involved in what's going on in South Africa. Sorry about that. But
No. You're absolutely right, Leigh. I cannot understand the mentality. I escaped. I'm all right, Jack. And so screw the rest of you. I'm sorry. I cannot go to my grave knowing that I did nothing. I can't.
That's it, Karin.
Impossible.
But for me, I feel this fight. For me, it's actually a bit of a genetic memory thing too. I feel the struggle of my Boer ancestors, those who suffered in those.
But it's in your blood. It's
in my blood.
It's what you are. It's there. I feel it too. I'm actually only a second generation South Africa on my father's side. My grandfather was an American, came to South Africa, saw my grandmother, a Boer lady, and he fell hopelessly in love with her, and they married. So I have from the American side and from the Afrikaans Boer community side. Both are so equally important to me. And one is not, better than the other.
Culture.
And I understand what you are saying.
Culture. When you go traveling, there may be in certain countries or certain types of food you prefer more than the other. But as a balanced person, to say that one culture is better than another, just not comparing the variables on a more specific is actually rather unfair. So I have an appreciation of all cultures for what each one can bring. I want to go to Chinatown, eat Chinese food. Doesn't mean I want to be Chinese. It just means I want to go over there and breathe the air over there and try the food over there and appreciate their culture. Okay, it doesn't mean I want to try and turn them into white people and I want to wipe them out. Okay. This is the understanding, and I think this is the real schism we have within our society, is that people don't understand, first off, the need for cultural acceptance. First off, celebrating our differences and also recognizing our similarities, because, as human beings, we have more similarities than differences.
Absolutely.
That's it. And ultimately, everybody wants to everyone wants
when you put emotion into the mix. That's when your differences become more apparent. It's not really about race. It's about the emotion behind it.
The sad thing is we've been programmed with such a negative state of mind that we actually look more towards the differences between us than we do towards the similarities.
Yeah.
And if you actually focus the other way around, you'd find there's more in common between us than there is to divide us. It's just a switch of the mindset. And again, that negative mindset is a deliberate, dysfunctional program seeded into society by situations like what you see going on in South Africa. I mean, these people are traumatized, okay? South Africans are traumatized. Every single one of them probably needs therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. For everything they're going through. And when you're in that state, you do stupid and irrational things. That's when you do stupid things.
I'm sorry, my dogs, they...
No worries.
They got us at night, so they're very important.
They want to be heard, Leigh. Mine do it as well.
They're keeping you safe, so.
Yes, they do. They're very important to us. So.
Ladies, I'd like to suggest that we do this more often, on a more regular basis. I think it's very necessary to keep the message going and the energy of the situation flowing, particularly now with things reaching such a crescendo crisis point. I don't think we can actually talk about this enough. I don't care how many shows we do covering the same stuff over and over again, the same statistics, bringing the story home, bringing the message clear. It's a message that needs to get out there, and I'm willing to work towards trying to set up a regular media output so that we can discuss these things. As you've done, Karin, collect a few things, the latest statistics, let's talk about them, let's unpack these issues bit by bit, bring this awareness to people on an international level for whatever that might be worth to anybody.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that, you know, for years I felt I'm a voice crying in the wilderness and nobody's listening. And amazingly enough, it was only when I wasn't able to do shows due to my surgery that I realized how many people were listening. And it makes me feel humble, small, and not worthy of the job, you know, because it's such a big subject. And I'm a little grey-haired granny. I'm a nobody from nowhere, literally. I don't have a claim to fame. I don't think I'm anything other than granny. And it's humbling to me to realize how far and wide our voices are heard, and how people negatively or positively that are responding to the message. And even a negative response is not important, because at least they heard. And so it's kind of, it's a shit job, but someone has to do it. It's the best I can sum it up as, you know.
But you are so good at it. You and Mel both, you are brilliant at it, and we need you guys. You have no idea how we need you.
You know, I funny had this chat again with my mom, same Skype call last week, and she just said to me, she goes, geez, she chose on a hard path, eh? I think she kind of thought that I just, you know, kick back, have a career and be cozy and not worry. Have this overdeveloped sense of existential dread, as she calls it. But it's not, it's like, I'm sorry, but I actually have a heart and a conscience, and I'm a kind person, and, you know, that's partly, you know, you should be grateful for that. And then I do take great concern for what is happening to the people that I grew up with and that I knew as children who are still there. I'm not just going to like someone forget that they exist and carry on with my life. They have helped. Each and every person I've come across has created who I am in some little way. And I respect and honor them all for that. And that's the basic respect we should give to every human life. And I get that completely on every level, which is why, for me, this is a subject that I think every South African should be talking about right now, because let's face it, things are only going from bad to worse, whether you're inside South Africa or not. We need to pay attention to what's happening there. Some points you touched on, okay? Whilst you're having a massive storm, you have fire set. Why do they do that? They do that because when there's crisis kicking down at one point, they want to put you under pressure by creating crisis in another place. And then again, it's the whole psychological breaking down, breaking your spirit, trying to bring you to a point where they can just take you out with minimal resistance, okay? This is what it's all about. And we're going to be seeing more and more and more of this. I must just say, I didn't know about the garden route completely, but I'm just heartbroken. Nice, man.
Yeah.
It's just, honestly, it's one of the most incredible. It should be a World Heritage Site, that entire area.
It should.
Well, yeah.
Nasna and Plet. I mean, my brother lives in Plet and was evacuated. And that same, I dread the phone ringing. I dread everything that goes on because I opened Facebook the other day and people that my family have been friends with for 30 years or more, live just down the road from us in Machubas Kloof. The husband was shot and beaten, taken to ICU and died. The wife was beaten. And you're so scared to answer the phone if it's a South African number, to look at social media, because you know that, it's like Leigh said, you don't know what tomorrow will bring. You know that somebody that you love and know in South Africa is not going to be anymore. And how can we sit back and do nothing? How can we sit back and live our lives and ignore? You just can't. You can't do it. It's so wrong.
No, it's inhumane not to pay attention to this insanity. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what your culture is. Cultural genocide or genocide of any nature is a crime against humanity. It's unlawful according to the United Nations Human Rights Charters. And yet being allowed to persist. And it's not like they don't know about it. I personally have delivered applications to the International Criminal Court on several occasions. I have the receipts to prove it, okay? They just are not interested in acknowledging the situation.
No, because Front National went to the UN and put their case. And the South African delegates tried to shut them down. And the American delegates said, no, I want to hear. Okay, so now you've heard. What have you done? 2 years ago, nothing, not another word. So I did hear the other day they're going to take up they're going to do an investigation, but I'm sure it's not into the white murders or farm murders in South Africa, but they are taking notes. And it was a Dutch lady.
Yes, you're right. I saw something about that as well. You're right. It is a Dutch lady, I think.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you why that's not happened, okay? It's because we've had a Dutch farmer murdered in South Africa. That made it into the papers here in Holland. And suddenly Holland's looking at the whole thing again.
Yeah. But then again, it was also a Dutch journalist who lived in South Africa for many years, who formed the group Sense Bugbear, who got Genocide Watch to come to South Africa and do those 2 reports on South Africa. You see, so it took a long time. It took a hell of a long time for anybody to do anything. But if we collectively do nothing, nobody else is going to do it either. So we have to. I mean, your efforts, Mel, maybe nothing's come of it yet, but there will be that little thing that happens in South Africa that they say, oh my Lord, now maybe we should take a relook at that subject. You know, you never know what is going to spark it off. And if you hadn't done it, nothing's going to ever happen.
I can't
Sorry, I'm interrupting. Mel, the last show I did with Eilish, I think, you were very, very ill. We had huge responses on our organization because of that show. People asking questions, emailing us and wanting to know more about what's going on. And so it's really, you might not think that it's making a difference, but we see the difference that it's making, because 5 and 10 and 15 people that wake up and start asking questions, to us, that's huge.
Yes, I must just say that the most mail and correspondence I get thanking me is from South Africans who read my book, who come across one of my South African presentations about what's going on there. And actually, that is when I realized, for me, that is what keeps me going. It's like the energetic currency I need to know. It's the motivation. Okay, yes, there are people who are benefiting from this, even if it's just, say, maybe even one person who got the truth, who understands why things are the way they are and what their options therefore are. Because you can't even begin to look at the options if you've still got too many layers of confusion to work through. So what I've tried to do with my works is I've tried to present the information. Some of it's been very difficult for people to digest, particularly when I start going into, okay, hereditary prejudice of South Africans is Vut was bad because he started apartheid, blah, 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 and Mandela's a hero and he's an angel and a saint. But then you start to put to people, we live in a society where sinners are praised as saints and saints are praised as sinners, and you actually have to swap the position of these two men around. Okay, let's start there. Then we start looking at what apartheid was really all about. Let's look at separate development for a start, okay? What those policies are really all about, and the fact that it's been bastardized to seem that what it is was purely because the mainstream media have used the whole apartheid rhetoric as a way in which to psychologically manipulate into play the country that they wanted to have in place.
There you go. There you go. But Mel, okay, you might be able to answer this for me, because I cannot answer it. So the international powers that be wanted South Africa for its riches. But at the same time, they are now allowing the Chinese and Russians to take over South Africa and its riches. So who benefited?
The people who are benefiting, you don't even know their names. There are families that are bloodlines that go so far back, okay, you can trace them so far back. The actual genetic makeup of these bloodlines is a subject for another discussion, okay? What I will say, however, is that most of these people, you probably wouldn't even know their names. They've got governments and front people who do all their bidding and dirty work and that are aligned to the higher forces that these people are aligned to as well. But I mean, if you talk about like the von Drakenberg De Beers, you probably never heard of them. They're one of the most wealthy, most powerful ancient bloodlines that hold a huge amount of wealth and that have been part of this sort of governing top 13 families as going back as far in history as we can. So you have to understand that there are people there who, because they control the media, you don't ever hear their names. It's almost forbidden. So we don't really know who these people are, just because unless you do the research, which I've done, and you start getting into it, there are records of it. There's ways in which you can find out. There's people who've written books. So it's all out there. It's on the internet. You can find it. You can learn for yourself exactly what's going on. And what I would say is that people must never think that the control of South Africa, people go, oh, praise Zuma, he's so bad, he's so corrupt, South Africa's so broken because of this man has a standard 4 education. Do you really think he's running the country? It's being run from outside the borders. He's just a puppet. He gets whatever he wants if he does whatever they want him to do. You call them the Illuminati, you call them the Jesuits, you can call them the 13 Illuminati bloodline families, whatever you want. They're there. It's a provable fact they exist. There's so much, there's enough documentation to prove it. Again, please read my books. It's all there. But they are ultimately controlling everything. Now, the alliance with China, what you need to understand is they are looking for ways to unite under a centralized one world government.
Yes.
Okay? And that is all these political menagerie movings around, what it is, pieces on a chessboard with an ultimate goal. What we need to be aware of is what the ultimate goal is, not get too distracted by the moves in between and think that you're heading down one path because that's what they want you to think, and actually going down a completely different path.
Yeah, it's what's hidden by that
yes.
overreaching noise that you're hearing from that path. What is the hidden bit of that? What is going on behind the scenes there? But I mean, to be wanting to build 6 nuclear power stations in the mess that is South Africa is absolute disaster waiting to happen. It's crazy.
Well, and specifically when, in our day and age, we're very well aware of the very many different alternative energy sources other than nuclear power.
Yes.
I mean, of all things, nuclear power. Isn't that very 1940s? I'm sorry.
Yep. I mean, they can't even maintain coal ones, and we're going to give them
nuclear.
And I read this maybe late last week that those negotiations are signed, far advanced, done. So, hello, what are we actually trying to do here?
Never forget, South Africa is nothing more than a business, okay? It is a corporation, all right?
Yes.
The Oppenheimers are the Illuminati bloodline branch managers of
South Africa. Yeah.
They have enough wealth in their accounts, both in South Africa, in Swiss bank accounts, in bank accounts in London, and wherever else. They have enough wealth in their accounts to house, feed, clothe, medically care for, and educate every person in South Africa, no one left behind.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the true sickness. Do you ever hear anyone going after the Oppenheimers? No.
Never. In fact, you don't hear their names anymore, really.
No, you don't. We don't hear their names at all. It's like, mum, nothing, zip, zero.
And here's the other really sick factor. If you want to know what the gold and diamonds of South Africa is paid for, we have a situation where we've got these various roundtable groups which have been set up for world control. They run things like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Club of Rome, all of that, the roundtable groups. Those roundtable groups were set up and funded by money that came from none other than Cecil John Rhodes himself.
I know.
He paid for all of that. The diamonds and gold South Africa's pay is the money that's funding all these secret societies that are controlling our planet today. That's the really bad and sick truth about it.
Yeah.
So
and yet, I did a whole show with the an author in South Africa. Can't remember his name right now. On Cecil John Rhodes. Would Africa, particularly Rhodesia and South Africa, ever have become such incredible countries without his influence?
Again, influence is relative, okay? I think when you actually look into who Cecil John Rhodes was, I mean, most people don't know that he was a flaming, raging pedophile homosexual.
Yeah.
Okay, start with that. That's just not okay for me to have a man in power like that. Not the homosexuality thing, but the penchant for young boys. That's a problem for me. Not to mention the fact that he was also a Freemason, okay? Initiated in Oxford as a Freemason.
Yeah.
And very much in his will, it's clearly stated that he's leaving his funds for the setting up of a imperialist Britain one world order.
Yes.
So, okay, yes, again, it's the whole thing. I look at Indonesia as well. I mean, you've got 220 million people. 200 million of them live in utter poverty. Maybe 20 million of them live a middle-class life. Maybe 1 million of them live like wealthy, all right?
Yeah.
The Dutch went there, okay? Obviously, that's how they found South Africa. They're on the way to the East Indies.
Yeah.
The Dutch went there, and you look at the state of the poverty there, and you realize that the Dutch came and were there long enough to put enough infrastructure in to benefit off the resources and get cheap labor, but not enough infrastructure to lift people out of poverty. And this is where the shortcoming of South Africa is. With a country with this much resource behind us, why do we still have such a dire state of things going on? It's because the resources are not remaining in the hands of the people. It's been taken out of the country by forces outside the country, and the people who are suffering is half the population. And the other half...
I think that was the ultimate goal in any case from day one. Since they started with the end of apartheid, that was the ultimate goal, is to rid South Africa from their resources and making us all think that it's the other one and that one thinks it's this one, and in the meantime it's completely different people, like you say, that we don't even know their names of.
Leigh, let me just tell you, you're absolutely right, but it actually goes back to the Boer Wars, all right? The Boer nations controlled South Africa in a beautiful way. I mean, they really had it all going on. And the British decide that they want to come and just take the gold and that they're going to help themselves in that. And they'll do whatever they want. I mean, the Second Boer War was, Anglo-Boer was the most expensive war Britain has ever engaged in. They had more soldiers in South Africa, British soldiers, than there were white people in South Africa altogether. So they were very desperate, very, very desperate for those resources. And that plan, and you can see in the various undulations of it, how it's unfolded over history. When you look at sort of where we supposedly became independent in 61, which was just, again, a public relations campaign.
It was.
We changed the currency, the system didn't change. We still got a central bank that's run by the Rockefellers and the Oppenheimers, all that kind of stuff. So nothing really changed. It's just a relabeling. It's an epic rebranding campaign. And that's all Nelson Mandela's release was. South Africa is still controlled by the same powers that have controlled it since the day Cecil John Rhodes was in power. That's the truth.
Wow.
And what we have now, instead of having white puppets doing the dirty work, we have black puppets doing the dirty work.
Yeah. But then, Mel, and another question. So how do they benefit by the creative working people being wiped out and destroyed? Then Africa just becomes a slum again, like the whole rest of Africa. There's the benefits, because then we can walk in and take over under peacekeeping guises and change everything again back to the way it's actually wanted to be, I guess.
I'm going to end this on a bit of a tragic note because we've got 5 minutes left, and I'm just going to say to you, Karin, you have to understand the end goal, and that they want to depopulate South Africa. The depopulation agenda of South Africa I've known about for years, and it's now
the earth
in general, but they're starting with Africa, okay?
Yeah.
It all starts in Africa,
yeah.
and then it unfolds everywhere else. They test all the methods out there, and then they unfold everywhere else.
Yeah.
Okay? Now they got AIDS into the population by vaccinating people.
Yes.
Okay? They tested it out, and then they go and test it out in the homosexual communities of San Francisco.
Yeah.
And that's why the homosexuals got AIDS. So it's what you need to understand is that there is an agenda that's been rolling out. And ultimately, what I believe is they want to depopulate Africa. Okay, the whole world to depopulate Africa. But from what I understand is there's also a major agenda to, once they've gotten the population reduced, to completely change what we see in Africa at the moment, terraforming. We're talking about chemtrails changing the atmosphere, terraforming the land. The Chinese want to come in there and turn it into a completely different place.
Yeah.
So it's about getting rid of those people who are attached to the land and will fight for it by helping genocide, and then they've got control to do whatever they want, whatever that agenda is, and it's not a pretty one.
Yeah, I get it. I do. I just hoped I was wrong.
No, me too.
Because it would
really does.
It would appear that the depopulation of Earth is, sad to say, whites first, because we're the ones who will stand in the way, who will make a plan, who will fight. And so we have to go first. Yeah. The rest will be compliant.
Well, they've been talking about it for years. Get us to fight each other so we can wipe each other out. And they don't have to waste their time doing it. So we get rid of the white people first, because we are some of the most strongest, smartest and well-developed. Not for any other reason than we have been afforded more opportunities through circumstance and economics, blah, blah, blah. But that's the way it is. And we probably are the last defense against the rest of the world being totally annihilated.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, we've bought into it mostly. Yeah, we've bought into our own extinction.
And we propagated it as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I do want to say we've got to end it there, ladies. Leigh, if you wouldn't mind just giving people some details of where they can contact you to get donate to your charity. Any details?
Okay, they can go to www.safrpsa.org. You can also go to Facebook, South African Family Relief Project. Please go and see what we do. Open up your hearts and donate. We really, really do need your help.
Karin, is there anything you want to add to that?
Not really. If you want, you can donate on my page as well to, if you want to help the people who are able to get out. But my website is radiofreesouthafrica.com. And my YouTube channel is also Radio Free South Africa if you want to learn more about the problems in South Africa and how we got there.
Absolutely. And we look forward to seeing you ladies both here more regularly. I think we've got to do this more often. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to talk with two wonderful South African warrior goddesses in this amazing fight for our country, and it makes me very warm in my heart to know that there are people out there who feel this cause as deeply as I do. So thank you. I honor and respect you ladies for your efforts, and let's work together to bring more awareness to this horrific situation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mel, for having us.
You're welcome. You're most welcome. And everybody, please do go check out stopsouthafricangenocide.org. Also, you can check out the archives of the show on Conscious Consumer Network's archive channel, ccn.media. I'm going to wrap it up for this evening. A big thank you to Leigh and Karin for joining me, and we will be back again at some stage to discuss this in more in-depth detail. But for now, don't turn your backs. Pay attention to what's going on, because trust me, it's significant. My name is Mel V. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. We'll be with you again. Take care. If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing. And with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire: the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.